Have you been recently let go from a job, maybe because of downsizing or the organization was restructuring? Well, this video is for you. Once you get the interview date, there is some things that you want to do in order to have a meaningful interview, whether it's in virtual or whether it is in person. There are certain things that you must do in order to make that interview a successful one. Show up to the interview appropriately dressed. A lot of times we'll say, well, I was neat, I was clean, but a lot of times you want to dress just like you fit in with the culture of the organization. Remember I said you was going to do that homework? Well, this is why. Because when you go for the interview, you want to make sure that you look the way that the people there look. And so you want to make sure that you're not overdressed, but you don't want to be underdressed. So you want to make sure that you stay within that little gray area so that you will fit right in. Be prepared to answer questions and do some research on questions that are asked at interviews. This is going to help you to think about what answers that you want to give so that you're not there lost, because now you have to try to think on the spot about certain questions, because I'm telling you, these questions are very interesting. So you want to make sure that you're ready for some of the questions that you're going to be asked. For example, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? This is one of the questions that a lot of interviewers like to ask. They're asking this because they want to see if you have plans to leave or if you're not going to be around long. So you definitely want to make sure that you have a strategy that you're going to be there for at least 5 years, and that you will answer will be that, in 5 years you hope that you've learned a lot at the place wherever you are employed, and that you want to make sure that you maximize the time there on new things, and you also want to take up on the opportunities that the organization that you're applying for if there are any opportunities for advancement. So it shows the employer that you are planning on being there for a while, and that you're going to explore different options in their organization. Another question is, if your co-workers had something to say about you, what would they say about you? So think about some of the things and qualities that you have. You want to be honest. If you heard your coworker say, "Oh, girl, you so resourceful," that's one of the things that you want to mention. Like, "Girl, I can always count on you. I'm dependable." Things like that. Or if your supervisor on your evaluation says she's a hard worker or he's a hard worker. And so definitely be honest, but look at some of the qualities that were said about you in the past, because it will come across as authentic as it really is. Another question is, can you think of a project that you were handed to do or assigned to do, and how did you accomplish it? So you would want to think of something or a task that you had to do, and how did you go about doing it? And one of the things is that you would formulate a team, or you would formulate all of the things that you needed to do the project. And then once you had everything that you needed to do the project, if you needed help, you would delegate to other people to help you with the project. Then you would set deadlines for when everybody needed to have every task done, including yourself. And then also you would make sure that you get that project completed at the time, in the time frame that was requested, and you present it to your boss. So that's one of the ways that you would show that how you would take care of a particular assignment. Then one of the questions that they'll usually ask sometimes is, if you weren't able to get a project completed, how would you handle it? And the answer would be, in most cases, is if you weren't able to get a project done because of unforeseeable reasons, meaning that it was things out of your control, that you weren't able to meet the deadline, that I would notify my supervisor or my boss or my manager immediately. I would let them know that the reason why I would not be able to get the project done, and I would give them a new deadline of when I would be able to have that project to them. And then two more questions is, what are some good things or qualities that you say that you have? And think about the different qualities that you would say about yourself. But a lot of them will ask you, what are some improvements that you have that you would like to work on? And so you would need to come up with some things that you would like to work on. And sometimes it is making sure that you delegate to others when you need to, making sure that I'm a hard worker and I will work, and try to do all of my stuff myself. And I also just have to make sure that I delegate to other people and be real creative about how you say things that you need improvement on. Most of the time, it can be something that is a positive. Try to make it a positive, and even though it's supposed to be, a negative. Don't go too far. Hopefully, you don't have anything like that. That would, you in your life, that would be something that you would have worked on before you applied for the job. You would take a personal development training for those type of things. So most of the things should be things like really easy, fixable things that most people have to work on. And that is making sure that you ask people for help. That would be one quality that you may have, because you want to do it and make sure you get it done right. That's something that you can say as well. In-person interviews, those are a little bit different from virtual, even though some of the things that you would do in person you would do on the virtual, but virtual has a few additional things that you have to consider when you do a virtual interview. A lot of times, most employers are now doing what they call group interviews. That means that it's a group of people, or at least two people, that are interviewing you for any particular position. So in that case, if one is asking questions, make sure that you engage both. Don't look at just the person that asked the question. Make sure that you look at both people when you answer the question, to include them in, to make them feel like they're part. And it helps to break that you're rigid and nervous and you can't like be personable. A lot of times when you talk to both person or the group, make sure you talk to everyone feels included, because usually everybody in there is going to hand an evaluation to the main interviewer. So you want to make sure that everybody in that room feels comfortable and feel like they want you to be one of their coworkers. And with that said, that means to give that eye contact, and if needed, to shake hands with those before you sit down. Greet each one. Another important thing is to ask questions, because a lot of times you're there and you just want them to give you the interview, to ask you the questions that they need to ask, and a lot of times you don't ask questions. But believe it or not, when you ask good questions, like, just more about the job, maybe a follow-up question that they described about the job, it could be open-ended, like, tell me more. What that does is that help them to feel like, oh, okay, he or she is really interested in this job, because they're asking a lot of questions and they're interacting with us. So a lot of times they want you to interact with them. So do that. Not too much talking now. Don't do that. But do ask the pertinent questions about the job. Sometimes they'll have a follow-up question and say, well, is that a problem for you? And say, oh, no, I just really want to know, because I want to make sure that I'm going to be able to do all of the things, or I just want to make sure so that I know what is expected of me, so that I would be able to do the things that is expected of me for this new position. At the end, make sure you thank everybody for taking the time to interview with you, and make sure that you engage everyone and thank them and ask them, will I hear back from you? and they usually will give you an idea of when you will hear back from them. If the interview is virtual, there are some things that you must do when you're going to have a virtual interview. And believe it or not, a lot of employers are going to virtual interview. Some will do the initial interview where it is just a tape recording with you answering some questions on a tape. So be prepared for that as well. And I'm going to give you some tips as to how to go through a virtual interview. First, make sure that the computer and the equipment that you're going to use is up to date. Make sure you're not using an old computer, because what will happen is sometimes it will not be able to open the platforms that you need or the applications that you need, and it will cause you to not be able to do the interview. You make sure that you have a good internet connection, because that is key to you being able to do the interview. Because what happens is sometimes if your internet or your Wi-Fi is not a good quality or a high speed, it will start to glitch and it will start to drop the call or the interview, and you don't want that. Is enough pressure on you to be able to do a virtual interview, and then to have it drop would be really not good, especially if it's on your part. Now also to make sure that the lighting is adequate, enough for them to be able to see your face so that they would be able to identify you. You don't want to be in a dark room or a dark place. Make sure that it's adequate lighting so that they will feel comfortable, that you don't have anything to hide, that you are an open book, and that they will feel comfortable doing this interview with you. Check your background. Just like you see in this video, I'm up against a wall. The reason why you do that is because that helps that no one can walk behind you while you're talking to someone and while you're interviewing. A lot of times when you have an opening in the back, sometimes people, when you're so focused on what you're doing, you're not aware that people are walking behind you, and sometimes it can be very distracting for the person that's interviewing. So sometimes it can be people doing inappropriate things that you would be surprised. I've been on interviews, not interviews, but I've been on Zoom calls and team meetings, and people were doing some interesting stuff in the background. You would be surprised. And with that said, just make sure there's no noise, a lot of noise. Try to go into a quiet place to have that interview. If somebody yell out or do something, just apologize and keep going with the interview. But try your best on your end to try to make sure that that interview is in a place where it won't be as much interference or noise going on. Another thing is very important is when you're answering the questions, make sure that you look at the camera. Because believe it or not, when you look at the camera, it is like you're looking at the person, and it makes it look more intimate, and it also makes it look more personable, so that the person that's interviewing feel a little bit of warmth. You can look at the screen when they're talking, but when you're talking, try to your best to talk to the camera. And then that way it makes you look more like you're talking directly to the person. Now those are some of the tips for doing virtual interviews. And don't forget to like and subscribe and to comment and support what I'm doing. I would like to put out more videos for you, and you can go to my channel and on my page and see more. I'm at MOMAFEY-HT. All right.